Great. Well, welcome everyone to this, our inaugural session of the 2021 Bloodwater webinar series. This session is called Leading with the Future in Mind, How to Lead and Cultivate Leadership Pipelines. We are so excited to bring this and a host of other organizational and leadership development resources this year. We're doing this through a new initiative that will be rolling out very, very soon. And we are especially excited to kick this off with Coach Cece, whom some of you may already know from the leadership coaching program last year. Cece works as an executive wellness and leadership coach. She runs one-on-one coaching programs for leaders and organizations like you all, and she also runs training for organizations. Welcome, Cece. I will turn it over to you. Thank you for doing this for us today.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Nadia. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you for coming in on time. Like Nadia said, the session will be recorded. We're together for just a couple of hours, so it'll be good for you to, at your leisure, have another listen, share it with your team. I'll be sharing, it's an interactive session. There'll be a lot of exercises we'll be doing. There'll be a lot of time for self-reflection. So I'm going to try and keep it as interesting for you as possible, even as we learn. Like Nadia said, I work as an executive leadership and wellness coach. What that means is I run one-on-one coaching programs for leaders like you guys, helping you with your professional and also any personal challenges you might be having. So it's a holistic approach that I take. And I also run trainings in organizations. I run them virtually, like what we're doing now. And I also run them face-to-face for very, very small groups here in Nairobi. You can reach me on these links here. I'm on LinkedIn, just look for Cece Ojani Bekor. You can also follow me on Instagram. I share a lot of coaching content there, including video content. Of course, it's all free, it's on Instagram. So I wanna invite you to check those out. And of course, you can email me, especially if you have any questions about what we've talked about today. You can email me, cc@themainprotagonist.com, and you can also go to the website where you'll also get the link to my podcast. So I like sharing a lot of free content around leadership and wellness. So have a look at those links. Now, I often get asked, where did I get that business name from? And there's a bit of a story behind it, guys. I value creativity, I value storytelling, and I also value taking personal responsibility for how things are going in your life, personally and professionally. And when you think about a film, a movie, the main character is called the main protagonist of the movie. So for example, in Black Panther, for example, the Chadwick Boseman character, the Black Panther, is the main protagonist in the movie. And I just wanted to remind everybody that I come across professionally that you are the lead character in the story of your life. So you want to be intentional about how you play that role. Now, an interesting story I'd like to share. I'll be sharing stories as well from my own experience, the experiences of my previous clients. I ran a workshop in Melbourne, Australia once. And at the end of the workshop, a lady came up to me and she said, you know, Cece, when you shared the story of your business name, it made me realize that I've been playing the sidekick my whole life. In other words, she's always the bridesmaid, never the bride. And she said to me, she realized that she's always the one helping other people with their projects and wasn't gathering enough courage to work on her projects. And after hearing that story, I decided I was going to keep the business name. So that's just a bit of background around how the main protagonist coaching came to get that name, right? So just remember, you play the lead role in the story of your life, and that's something worth sharing with your direct reports as well. Now, what will help you in today's workshop is a number of things. There's an ideal mindset. Mindset is just a big word for the thoughts and beliefs you carry around in your mind. What will help you in a training like this is to be present. So forget about what you were doing before this, forget about what you have to do after, and just be here now. Be open to hearing something new. Some of you may have come across some of these learnings, some of you may have not have. So just remain open to hearing something new. Reflect on your own experiences. So if I ask you to engage in some individual reflection, think about your own workplace, think about your own life, think about your own behavior. That's how you'll get the most out of the tools. And of course, participate. So please feel free to ask questions on the chat box. I'll just keep it open as well so that I can see if you have any questions. So go ahead and pop any questions you may have on the chat box. And in the breakout rooms, please participate. And here's an important thing as well. Cascade these learnings down to the rest of your team. So don't just keep them to yourself. You can share this presentation with them. You can brainstorm, workshop together what has been learned. That way, information gets passed on to your direct reports, and that's a really big part of succession planning. People need to be empowered with information, okay, including personal development and career development information. Okay, cool. So what we're going to cover today, we're going to look at two key topics. The first one is self-awareness, and here we're going to look at how you can enhance your leadership style. The second topic is how to develop future leaders in your organization. So we're going to look at what are some of the best ways of engaging with and growing your team members. And then we're also going to look at, well, what are some of the things you can do day to day to manage your team well? And then we're going to engage in a bit of a fun, thought-provoking exercise at the very end around developing your own personal vision and mission, the vision you have for your own life, because that will influence how you behave day to day. Okay, so let's get into it. Okay, let's start with self-awareness. All right. Here's a question I would love for you guys to reflect on. Are you aware of how you come across as a leader? Okay, self-awareness is really, really key. Okay, how do people perceive you? Because how they perceive you will influence how they respond to you, how they engage with you. If you are perceived, for example, as an approachable person, people will be willing, your direct reports will be willing to approach you. But if you're perceived as a bit standoffish, they might not be willing to do that. Okay, so self-awareness is really, really key if you want to be an influential, powerful, and effective leader. There are very many tools out there you can use to help you with your self-awareness. You can do a whole bunch of online tests like MBTI. The one that I wanted us to look at is this one here, the 6 leadership styles. And it was put together by a gentleman called Daniel Goleman, okay, Goleman. There's a lot of content made available with Daniel Goleman's work. And this particular table is a reflection of what he calls the 6 leadership styles. Now, for me, I like to say to clients, don't feel you need to put yourself in a certain box. You're a dynamic human being, you have different moods, you are responding to your environment. So what I like to say to clients is, just reflect on which of these leadership styles you find yourself defaulting to, okay? So let's go through them one by one. The columns represent the 6 leadership styles. So we can start, for example, with pace setting. Let's start with pace setting, which is the second last column on the right. And I've got a bit of a story to share there, which is why I wanted us to start with this one. So a leader who defaults to the pace setting style sets a very high standard for performance. If you were to capture the style in a sentence, it would be, do as I do now. They are very much driven to achieve. They like taking the initiative, and they're very conscientious, okay? Now, the pace setting leadership style is generally, when we say pace setting, we mean a fast pace, okay? A fast pace. So when does the style work best? You can see there that fourth row, it works best to get a quick result from a highly motivated and competent team. Now, here's the thing. There's a row that's deliberately missing here, and I'd love for us to discuss that. The question to ask is, when might that leadership style not work well? Okay, and I'll share a bit of a story with you. One of my clients has an HOD. They were engaging me in some coaching in 2018. So she has this HOD, head of department, who is very, very good at her job, very, very strong. But unfortunately, people were not staying very long in that team. And this client, the CEO, was a bit confused about why, because this lady is very, very effective at her job. So she sent her to me to get some coaching done. And inside of a few sessions, when I shared this chart with her, we realized that her leadership style was the pace-setting leadership style. So she moves very, very fast. She has very high standards for herself and for her team. And what she discovered was not all her direct reports can keep up with that fast pace. Okay, so the pace-setting leadership style, if we're going to look at when would it not work, the pace-setting leadership style doesn't work if all day, every day, we're moving at a very, very fast pace. Some people just can't keep that pace going, which is why people were resigning from the organization. They couldn't keep up that pace in that team. Okay. Now, if you are a direct report who is extremely ambitious, you want to go places very fast, you will appreciate this kind of leader. Yeah, because they'll get you where you want to go very fast. You'll learn a lot very quickly, and you'll be very stretched. Okay. Now, that very last column is just giving us an indication of what that the impact that leadership style has on the overall environmental culture. And that leadership style, if you do it too much, it ends up having a negative effect. Okay. So let's look at some of the other leadership styles. Let's go back to column 1, commanding. This is the leader who demands immediate compliance. The style in a sentence can be captured as do what I tell you. Yeah, these leaders are also very driven to achieve. They like taking initiative. They value self-control. It's great in a crisis when you want to kickstart a turnaround or when you have some problem employees. Okay, commanding, of course, also works best when you're pressed for time, which is sometimes the case. Sometimes if there's a pressing deadline, we all just have to do what we need to do and we can debrief and discuss later, but we've just got to get that thing out. Okay, now I'm wondering, guys, and you can go ahead and unmute yourselves. Can you think of some examples of when that leadership style will backfire or won't work well? Does anyone have any thoughts? You can go ahead and unmute yourself or post in the chat box. Does anyone have any thoughts?
Hi, this
Robert
is
and
Elizabeth.
team, are you there? Hi, Elizabeth. Great.
Yeah, I'm sorry I joined in late. I had a bit of trouble.
That's okay.
So in a situation that commanding leadership style will not work is where you have highly competent employees.
Mm-hmm.
And so these are people who really don't need to be told what to do. They know what to do.
Yes.
And so all they need is an environment and space to do what they have to do.
That's exactly right, Elizabeth. And smart people, you know, they want to contribute. They're not the sorts of people who, oh, it's just a job, I'll just come, you know, pass the time, go home, forget about work. Smart people want to contribute. They want to be part of building something. So you're absolutely right. And by the way, guys, there's this misconception that this is how things are done in the armed forces. You know, soldiers are just told what to do, what to do, what to do. But that's actually not the case. If the general is in one part of the world and the soldier on the ground is in another part of the world, the general can't just tell the soldier what to do. Yeah, because the soldier is the one on the ground. And quite often the soldiers, people in the armed forces, have to think for themselves. They have to think on their feet. So it's not necessarily the case that in the army, people are just robots being told what to do. It's a common misconception. Even in that situation, there is a lot of room for the person on the ground to make a decision because they're on the ground. They can see certain things and have certain information that the leader in the head office, for example, might not have. Okay, great. So too much commanding leadership style also tends to have a negative effect on the culture. Now, I should also just say that none of these are right or wrong. I like to say to clients, think about the circumstance that you're in. Like I said earlier, there might be times when there's a pressing deadline and we just need to do what we're told to do. Okay. Now, the visionary leadership style, this is the person who mobilizes us towards a vision. The style in a sentence is come with me. Visionary leaders are quite self-confident, they're quite empathic, and they are catalysts of change. The style works best when a change is required, a new vision is required, or when clear direction is needed. Yeah, I would add when you really need to motivate people, the visionary style works best. Now, the overall impact on culture is, of course, very positive. Okay, but I want to challenge you all. Can you think of a time when this particular style might not work? What sorts of circumstances or instances can it backfire? It's a bit of a trick question, this one. It's not apparent in the beginning. Any ideas? Okay, let me just share with you. This one is a bit tricky. I've had clients, for example, in the NGO space who were quite visionary. And what can happen, unfortunately, is it becomes the cult, C-U-L-T. It becomes a cult, the cult of the visionary leader. So I've had clients who have realized, oh dear, when my HODs are contacting a third party asking for something, it's taking a long time for it to happen. But when the leader, the visionary, picks up the phone and calls that very same person, the person says, sure, no problem. Okay, so visionary leaders do need to be careful, and they need to keep putting their HODs out there so that funders, suppliers, partners can see that other members of the team are also capable. Yeah, so when you're dealing with somebody who says, can I just talk to Elizabeth? Can I just talk to Elizabeth? That's usually a sign that, okay, this is developing into a bit of, the Elizabeth show or the Nadia show or the Cece show, when it should be about the organization. Okay. Now, when you're wanting to transition, yeah, if you're wanting to start another organization, for example, visionary leaders can find themselves stuck because they have become so associated with the company or the organization that to leave becomes a challenge. Okay, so always remember, even as charismatic and magnetic as a visionary leader is, they need to empower the team members so that the rest of the world can see that others in the organization are just as capable. Okay. I want to encourage you to jot down your questions, guys, or jot them, post them in the chat box so that we can engage. If you have any questions, insights, or thoughts, I'd love to hear from you, and others would love to hear from you as well. The affiliative leadership style is about creating harmony and building bonds. This is the leader that says people come first. They're very empathic. They value building relationships, very good with communication. They value ongoing, effective, strong communication. And it works really well to heal rifts in a team or to motivate people during stressful times. The overall impact is positive. Can you think of an instance where affiliative style might not work? Anything come to mind? Go ahead and unmute yourselves or post in the chat box. When might the affiliative style not work? Juman, did you want to say something? Anyone with any thoughts on that? When might a philosophy of
Maybe
people
I was
come
thinking,
first? Yes, go ahead.
maybe a large number of people are working with a new idea or new trend. Might be difficult to work in affiliative leadership style. Probably different perspectives, different backgrounds might affect the leadership to go.
That's
Amount of people.
That's an interesting thought, Elfaz. And to be honest, the answer you've given is the answer to when the democratic leadership style doesn't work best. Yeah, so because the democratic style is, what do you think? The democratic leader values forging consensus through participation. When there are many people, many different sorts of ideas, the democratic style can become a bit tricky. Yeah, so that's more of democratic. Julius has typed in and said, maybe difficult, maybe averse to conflict. Exactly right. Yeah, so if your philosophy is people come first, which is a very good philosophy to have, you might struggle, for example, when you have a problematic employee. Okay, you might struggle with things like that. You might not be too comfortable to have what we call courageous conversations, yeah, or what is also known as difficult conversations. Okay, and I've worked with leaders who have the affiliative style, and they tend to struggle when they're trying to be loyal to the organization and the organization's needs. When those needs conflict with needs of a few employees here and there, they might find themselves conflicted. Because the thing is, guys, your organization is it's a living thing. It has its own needs as well. And sometimes what the organization needs doesn't always align with what every single person wants. Okay, so just be mindful with that one as well, that you don't find yourself in conflict or between those two things, or averse to conflict and having hard conversations or courageous conversations with people. Now, the democratic style, as I said, is about forging consensus. This leader tends to ask, what do you think? What do you think? They value collaboration, also very strong with communication. It's very good to build buy-in or consensus, of course, or to get input from valuable employees. Okay, the overall impact you can see there is positive. But as I said, the democratic style can be a little bit tricky if you keep asking every single person, what do you think, what do you think, what do you think, and you have differing views. That can make it a little tricky. I remember one person, as a gentleman who came to one of my workshops once, and he realized he had this leadership style. And the challenge is it can take long to make decisions. Yeah, if you're always trying to forge consensus, it can take long to make decisions. Okay. And finally, just bear with me 1 second. Finally, we've got the coaching leadership style. This is the leader that really values developing people for the future. Their style is try this, or I would adjust that and say, have you tried this? They are very empathic, they're highly self-aware, they value developing others. It's very good to help employees improve performance and in developing the long-term strengths in your people. The challenge with the coaching style, though, is sometimes people come to you and they're stuck. Like they've really thought of, you know, what is the potential answer to this problem, and they just don't know. So they might get a bit annoyed if you come back to them with, you know, have you tried this? Have you tried that? Sometimes people just need to be given the answer. Hey, you know what? Just do it this way. Yeah, or that was tried by somebody in the past, it didn't work, so let's just drop that and do it this way. Okay, so the coaching leadership style, you do have to be careful. You can be that leader who's always giving it back to the person who's come to you to ask for advice or counsel. That has its benefits. It's good to help people think for themselves sometimes, but sometimes they're truly stuck and they just want you to help them with the answer because you have more experience. Okay. So I'm curious to know, guys, you can type in the chat box, which leadership styles do you think you default to? Remember, there's no right or wrong. Which one or ones do you see you default to mostly? Go ahead and post in the chat box so you can unmute yourself. What styles do you default to, guys? Go ahead and post in the chat box. So Nadia is democratic, Robert is more affiliative. What about you, Elizabeth, Hermela, Julia, Selfas? Elizabeth, more pace setting? Yep, great. Okay, thanks for sharing, guys. So just remember, it depends on the situation you're in, and the advice here is just move from style to style, depending on what is called for in that situation, okay? So Julia's in between democratic and pace setting. Yeah, great. Awesome, guys. Thanks for sharing. Okay, so that's just a little bit around how to become more self-aware of your behavior and your style as a leader. Let's now move to topic number 2, which was how can we start developing future leaders, yeah, our people. I'm going to share a number of tools with you. The question we're asking here is, how can I engage with my team in a way that they become more proactive and enhance their performance? So here, what we're wanting, yeah.
Can I take you back a little bit? Sorry.
Yep, sure.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask a question regarding these different leadership styles. Is there one that is seen to be like organizations that have performed well because their leaders tend to be more on which particular style here, or that really doesn't matter, or that has not been checked out there?
Well, they say that the visionary style is the one that's most strongly positive. You can see there at the bottom. Yeah, so it's quite inspiring to be around a visionary. The thing with the visionary, though, is you've got to buy into her or his vision. Yeah, and you just need to be mindful that it doesn't become the cult of the visionary. Yeah, it doesn't become the cult of that individual. Yeah. So it's a real, I know we're in the not-for-profit space, but let me give you an example in the for-profit world. It's a real testament to Apple, for example, that even when Steve Jobs passed on, the company is still, it's still going. It looked like it was the cult of Steve Jobs, but clearly there were structures in place to keep the thing going. I did a training once where I was talking about this, and one person raised their hands and said, yeah, look what happened with Manchester United after Alex Ferguson left. So the football fans will know what I'm talking about. It's that kind of thing. You want to be putting structures in place so that even when you're gone or you're not around, or you've moved on to other things, that the organization still goes on strongly without you being there day to day. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, but to be honest, the best counsel I can give everybody is read the situation you're in. So even though it says commanding is overall negative, if you use it too much, again, there are instances where there is no time to forge consensus and ask questions. It's something is due. It's a big thing. We've got to get this thing in. So let's just do it. Yeah, we can debrief and ask questions and discuss later. Okay, so I like to say to clients, respond to the situation that's right here in front of you. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks for the question. Anyone else? Okay, great. So let's look at how we can develop future leaders. I'll share a number of tools with you. The question we are reflecting on here is, how can I engage with my team in such a way that they become more proactive and enhance their performance? So here, what I'm talking about is what in training we call intrinsic motivation. Intrinsic motivation is the motivation that comes from within a person, as opposed to extrinsic motivation, which is motivation that comes from outside. So reward and punishment is an example of extrinsic motivation, or carrots and sticks. The motivation is coming from outside. Yeah, so it's things like your pay will be docked if you keep coming late. That's extrinsic motivation. You want to shift things around and say, how do we create the kind of organization where no one is even thinking about coming late for meetings, for this, for that? They just want to show up on time and even earlier because they have intrinsic motivation. Okay, so something to be aware of there, guys. Are you motivating people using external rewards? Okay, so let's look at something, a bit of a tool that will help you with this, developing this intrinsic motivation. It's called MQ. You've heard of IQ, intelligence quotient. EQ is emotional quotient. MQ is the quotient of meaning in the workplace, the meaning quotient. And the question to ask yourself here is, what makes me wake up each day and come to this organization? Okay, now for you guys, many of you, of course, are founders, you're leaders, you're clear in your minds about why you come to this organization. But I want to invite you to ask your direct reports this question. What makes you wake up each day and come to this organization? Yeah, why aren't you somewhere else? Very important question to ask. Now, here are some of the reasons that people find work meaningful. A study was done by McKinsey & Co., and they've actually talked about it in one of their articles online. You can get access to it, meaning quotient in the workplace. Here are some of the reasons people find work meaningful. Number one, their work helps them make society a better place, and they like that. Number two, they like the particular customers, clients, or end users that the organization helps, and they value helping those people. Number three, I like the team, the people that I work with. Number four, my job helps me grow, so personally, professionally. Number 5, I value the salary I earn. Okay, so the money piece is really important. Here's what's so fascinating. The study found that there are roughly the same number of people in these categories, especially category 1 to 4, roughly the same number of people. And so the insight there is, guys, you can't just talk about the good you're doing in society, the good you're doing in society. That might be your reason for coming to work. But for somebody else, it might be, I like the team. I like the camaraderie, the engagement with my fellow co-workers. So as leaders, you want to always be thinking about these 5 things. Yeah, you might, for you, your meaning quotient might be number 1, it might be number 4. For somebody else, it might be number 3. So you always want to be thinking about how to make the organization a great place to work for by thinking about these 5 things. Okay, so what I'm going to ask you guys to do now, and we'll get into our first breakout room. I don't know how many we are, Nadia. Should we stick with breakout rooms or shall we just do plenary?
We are.
Because there's 8 of us.
Yeah, we're 8. It's your call.
Okay, cool. So maybe what we can do is just discuss it as a wider group. That would be good. So the question here, guys, is how can we as leaders leverage our employees' MQ? So now that we know that these are the sorts of reasons that make work meaningful for people, how can I leverage on that? So how can I make team a better thing, a healthier thing? How can I make it such that those who value working for this particular group of people in this particular team are finding that this organization is really great for that? Yeah, so how can I improve on this here? What ideas can I come up with? What about here, career and personal growth? What can I do such that this organization really helps people grow professionally and personally? Yeah. Now, when I'm doing trainings for organizations in the for-profit space, we always talk about number 1, I value making society a better place. But in the not-for-profit space, that tends to be obvious. You guys are doing good all day, every day. So that's why I wanted to challenge you and get you to think of how can you make team better? How can you make career and personal growth opportunities grow in your organization? How can you increase those opportunities? Okay, so rather than going into our breakout rooms, let's just have a discussion, guys. Any ideas you have around enhancing these things? Let's work with number 1 to 4 for now. What are some of the things we can do in our organizations to enhance these 4 things? Or those of you who have already tried and tested a few ideas that have worked, what has come up? What have you realized works? Go ahead and unmute yourselves or post in the chat box if you like.
Yeah, this is Julia. So I wanted to talk about some of the things that we're doing, especially in terms of career development. And
yeah, thanks, Julius.
Yeah, probably Elizabeth is better placed to speak about this than myself. So I'll just give superficially, but I think she can give more detail. But I think as Luala, one of the things that we've made a commitment to is staff development, and that means setting aside resources in the budget to support staff development. And so over the years, what we do, we support group-based trainings as well as individual trainings. So there is a committee that receives applications from staff on recommendation of their supervisors, and then the staff, that committee looks through the applications and then are able to support either in full or in part what the staff members are looking for. What I've noted though is that there is high propensity for staff members to want support for academic programs, mainly, degrees, diplomas, and all that. And a little bit little on the side of immediate skills that would be deployed to the work environment. So I think one of the things that Elizabeth is working on is to see how the request for staff development can be channeled towards the overall organizational goals, and how that support can, on the one part, build the staff, but also get them to acquire skills that would benefit the organization in the shorter term. Right.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Julius. And we're actually going to look at that here later on in today's workshop. How do you cultivate a learning culture in your organization? Because a lot of people place a lot of value on trainings run by third parties, which is really great because it's great to learn from a different person, somebody with a different perspective, like what we're doing now. However, the truth is most learning happens on the job. Every day, day in, day out, most learning happens on the job. So I'll get you guys later on to spend a bit of time thinking about what are some of the teachable moments that arise day to day in your work. Use that opportunity to teach a direct report. That's a form of training. It may have just taken 15 minutes, but that's a training. Yeah, and then also I'll get you guys to think about what are some of the in-house training sessions you can run. So Julius, what do you know from your wide range of experience that the rest of the team could benefit from knowing? What have you learned? And it can be anyone. It can be anyone in the organization. It could be anything from, how to be a genius with Excel, how to create compelling presentations, to work, to content and information that's more related to the work that you do. Yeah. Most learning happens on the job day to day. And a lot of my clients, I like to encourage them to put time aside to run in-house trainings for your team. Okay, so we'll get more into that later. Thanks for sharing, Julius. Anybody else? What are some of the things you can do? Yes, please, go ahead.
Yeah, I was running the risk of forgetting this one, but I wanted to share something interesting that I found in Luala. That during the final interview selection, staff members actually participate indirectly in assessing the candidate. So the candidate would come in and go around, invite the candidate to ask a few questions, interact with the people on the ground, just see what's going on around. So in the process, the candidate would be evaluated by the team that they're about to join, even as they do the formal interview process. I found that good because then the feedback that we got from the candidates that I like the people that work here, I like the spirit, I like their outlook, and so this is a place I would like to work. So you find people forming connections earlier on, and it makes it so much easier for them when they come on board, to join the team and just the synergies, and people want to work in such environments. So on the other hand, you have the candidate being interviewed, but you also have the candidate interviewing the team that they're going to work in. So I found that really interesting because I haven't seen it anywhere else that much.
Yeah.
I think it really is a positive culture that, people want to come to work. I mean, regardless of the environment, what's going on, people really look forward to coming to work with the people that they work with, their colleagues. So it really forms strong bonds early on.
Thanks for sharing that. That's really, I'll get you to, thanks so much, Elizabeth. Thank you for sharing that. That's very insightful and a great tip for everybody else. Yeah. And for those of you who are still working remotely, some of the things you can do is run some of your meetings a bit differently. You can start your meetings, a bit of camaraderie, joking, laughter, and really mean it when you say, how was the weekend? Be willing to listen and hear from different people. So making the workplace fun, even as you're doing a serious work, is a great way to enhance this here. Number 3, team. Okay. Anybody else want to add something? Yep, go ahead, Nadia.
Yeah, this connects kind of to both, but more for bullet number 4. Something that I've found to be really powerful is to have conversations with people on my team very specifically around like what your next role would look like. And then we can be very deliberate about, okay, so for you to fill that role, then, where are the areas that you should be growing in? And then just being very deliberate. I guess connecting back to some of the things that Julia shared, connecting back to very specific learning opportunities or skills development, training, or even just like being exposed to conversations, being exposed to processes. If it's not even about like a formal training, but just like an internal, this is how this goes for this function to be done. And then another thing that we started doing last year with our team is as part of our own like review processes, we answer the question, each person in our team, I feel most successful when, and then it's like ... And then we list the 10 things, and it's not purely about work, but just like for me to feel my most successful, my most whole, what are the things that speak into that? And then it's really great to have those conversations with your supervisor or your team members, so that like that, because that connects to how successful we can be when we are at our desk with our team members, even if it's not connected. But so it's really about like considering the person as a whole, and how your work or your work environment is adding to that, or hopefully not taking away from it.
Yeah, that's really great. I love that. And we're actually going to touch on that at the very end. I'll get you all to reflect on this question here, to think about this for yourselves, but also to invite your team members to think about this, because this is all going to help with that intrinsic motivation. Where do I see myself in March 2022? What am I doing more of? What am I doing less of? Okay, if this is what you want, well, then let's look at the things you'll have to do over the next 3, 6, 9, 12 months so that you can get to that place. Yeah. So in large organizations with sophisticated HR systems, it's all done in software. You say what you want, the software spits out a report, and the report tells you, all right, you'll need to do this, you'll need to do that. So I have a friend, for example, who works for one of the large multinationals, and the path is very, very clear, and that keeps him motivated. So he was based in the US. He knew he had to come to Africa for a few years. He chose to come to Kenya, and then he was told, well, okay, you're Kenyan, so it would be good if you could work in another African country. So he moved to Nigeria, did that for a few years, moved back to the States at a higher level. And what I say to clients in the SME space, in the not-for-profit space is, okay, we don't have those sophisticated HR, we don't have that sophisticated HR tech, but you can do the analog, the old school style. Sit down, have a conversation with someone about their career goals, where they want to find themselves a year from now, and what they'll need to do in the organization in terms of their capabilities, but also their personality and their attitude to get them there. Okay, great. Okay, so remember, we're looking at how can we develop future leaders. One way is leveraging on MQ to get that intrinsic motivation happening. Let's now look at, well, the day-to-day management. So actually, sorry, I've just realized I forgot to mention one thing here. A bit of a note about money. It can't always be about the money and the salaries. Yeah. So what we find as coaches and trainers in organizations, guys, is if you spend a lot of time on these 4 things here, yeah, enhancing the organization in these 4 ways, people stop being so obsessive about my salary, my salary, my salary. Okay, now, of course, you have to pay people enough that they're not struggling. That's a given, especially in markets like the markets we are in. So you know, the salary has to have the person not be stressing all the time about money, but don't make the mistake of thinking it's always about money. There are other things you can do to make someone's work experience really rewarding, such that they're not obsessing about their salary all the time. Okay. So let's now shift to thinking about, well, the day-to-day management. I want to develop future leaders. I want this to be the kind of workplace that grows leaders. I need to think about my day-to-day management. And the question we are reflecting on here is, how can I manage others well such that their performance is enhanced and future leaders cultivated? We've kind of already touched on that already, but let's see what else we can do. First things first, I want to talk to you about the round table. Okay. Now, this is literally imagining in your mind a round table where you're present, you're sitting there, and your leaders are sitting there around you. Yeah. And it's round to imply that all opinions here are valued. Everybody's thought process is welcome. There's no head, there's no tail. Yeah, so in the fables of King Arthur, for example, he had his round table of knights, and this is a similar kind of thinking. It implies that, okay, yes, I might be the founder, the co-founder, the ED, but when I'm in my leadership meetings, I want everyone to have an equal voice. Okay, so the question to ask yourself is, are all the necessary seats present at my round table? In other words, are all the necessary roles present in my round table? I've worked with clients, for example, who have realized that, oh my gosh, there's a certain role, like the chief operations officer role, that the way we're dealing with it now is not effective. Yeah. So we need to change how that chief operations officer role looks like. One of my clients realized, it sounds so simple, but it's not. He realized that he really does need an executive assistant because his time is being taken up by a lot of small, but time-consuming activities that have now become a waste of his time. It's not the best use of his mind as the leader and his time. So something as simple as, oh my gosh, I think I need a PA or an EA can make a world of difference. I've had clients realize that what is a part-time role should actually be a full-time role. And the reason it's not working is because there's a seat at the table that's a part-time role when it should be a full-time role. Okay, so ask yourself, are all the necessary seats present at your round table? And then the second question is, okay, if all the seats are present, are they occupied by the right person in terms of technical ability and in terms of attitude? Is each seat occupied by the right person? Technical ability and attitude. So what I'd love for us to do now, guys, is engage in a bit of individual reflection just for a few minutes. See yourself at that round table with your leadership team and ask yourself these two questions. Is there a role that's missing that now needs to be filled? And are the roles, the seats occupied by the right person? If you have any questions, please go ahead, post in the chat box or unmute yourself, go ahead and ask. But I'm gonna give you about 2-3 minutes just to reflect on this, okay? Are there any gaps that you can see can be resolved, any issues that can be resolved by making sure your round table is filled and filled with the right people? Give you a few minutes to do that. If you've got any questions, go ahead and ask.
Yeah.
Thanks, Julius. Go ahead.
I think mine is not really if everybody's represented, but also probably the quality of representation. And also, yeah, should we strive for the number in terms of quality of quantity or whichever constituency need to be represented, and what is optimal, especially at decision-making level. And with that goes the question of what is the relative size of a team or a leadership team that is efficient or that is reasonable. And the second question then is, should we aim more for quality of representation as opposed to the number or the quantity of people on the decision-making table?
Yeah, so that's a great question. You sound like you might be struggling with too many seats at the round table. Am I hearing you correctly?
Yeah, sort of. Yeah, because yeah, I personally believe in smaller, closely knit teams, and especially at leadership level, that you need to have a size of a leadership team that allows you to develop friendships that go beyond the job. And in that way, then you can be a source of mutual support to one another, which a number of leaders ordinarily do not get, because everybody is looking up to them for decisions, is looking up to them for direction, all that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you definitely want to focus on quality, Julius. You know, it's better to have 5 effective people around your table instead of 10 that is creating more chaos than anything else. Yeah, so just go back and reflect. Okay, are all the necessary seats present? Yes, they are, but now we have a situation of some extras. Okay, and if it's diminishing the effectiveness of the decision making, then that's problematic. That's problematic. Yeah, because you're right. You know that old saying, too many cooks spoil the broth. If there are 20 people at the table, but they are all necessary, they are all needed, then yeah, that's what you want to go with. But if you just need 10, then that's a different situation. So it comes down to what the organization needs. So each of you will have a different looking round table depending on what the needs of the organization are. Yeah. Does that make sense, Julius? It depends on the needs.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah. I'm the sort of coach and trainer who is really big on you being responsive to your situation. Yeah. What Nadia needs might be different to what Elizabeth needs, might be different to what, respond to what your organization is needing. That's why I say to people, your organization or your business, your project, it's a living thing. Yeah, that's why our brain, that's why they're called brain children. Our ideas are called brain children because they're like children. They need to be fed a certain way at the start. They need to be engaged with a certain way at the start. And then when the business is growing and getting older, it needs to be engaged with in a certain way. So go with what the needs of the organization are. Yeah, because what's working for those other people over there might not work for you, and vice versa. Okay, so you also certainly don't want to make the mistake of just filling seats for the optics. At the end of the day, we want to, everybody in an organization wants to be assured that the ship is being captained effectively and we're going to a destination that will be pleasing to us. Yeah, that's what matters at the end of the day. That security that the ship is being captained in the right direction and in the right way.
Absolutely, thanks.
Yeah, great. So this is an exercise, all the exercises we do today in this workshop, guys, and that's again why we're recording, is certainly for you to continue even when we wrap up at 4:15, 10 past 4:15. It's go away and think more deeply about this, okay? These are living, breathing tools. This roundtable, for example, is something, you don't just do it once and forget all about it. Do it, every 6 months, do it every year. You've always got to be checking in. Is the organization being tended to regularly? Is it being tended to regularly? Okay. Now, just to remind us where we are, we're thinking, okay, what are some of the tools and mindsets I should have in order to develop future leaders? We were looking at day-to-day management. We looked at the roundtable. Now here's another thing to consider. I call it the 3 tiers of team members, okay? Team A, if you want to be intentional about how you're managing people in your team, you can place them in 3 categories. Now, Team A are the star players. Yeah, these are the sorts of people who you can leave them alone and the job will be done. Minimal, no micromanaging, no, I always need to check, let me check what so-and-so is doing. You can leave them alone, the work will get done, they're proactive, they're engaged, enthusiastic, great to be around. These are the star players, and star players need challenge and they need growth opportunities. Otherwise, they'll get bored. And interestingly enough, it's star players who are bored who can sometimes become the troublemakers in an organization because they can be quite influential. Yeah, so there's one client I had in Australia who unfortunately had this issue. One of her star players gotten bored and is now the person gossiping and causing trouble in the organization. So star players need to be challenged. They need to be given growth opportunities. They care a lot about growth and moving forward. If they don't become troublemakers, they just leave. I've reached where I've reached with this organization. I'm job hunting and looking for something else. But ideally, you want to hang on to them. Now, team B are the people who, with a bit more intentional training, a bit more guidance, a bit more attention, they can become star players as well. Yeah, so they just need to be given a break. Yeah, they just need to be given a chance. They might not have access to all the privileges that, say, a team A star player might have had, but with the right amount of intentional training, guidance, nurturing, they will become star players. Okay. Conversely, if you just leave the team B alone and you're not, tending to them, they can just drop off or just kind of remain in a state of ennui. Yeah, a state of just stagnation, which is a real shame because they're kind of like diamonds in the rough, these guys, the team B. Now, the team C are the people who are not performing. They're not performing to the level you know they're capable of performing, or they're even just performing badly. Now, with this one, guys, before you quickly rush to place someone on a performance improvement program, yeah, before jumping to those sorts of decisions, I like to say to clients, be genuinely curious about what's going on for this person. Because I've got to tell you guys, in all the years I've been running coaching programs, trainings in organizations, I can tell you this, the bad apples are very, very few. Very, very few. Most people have a really good reason for doing what they're doing, behaving the way they're behaving, even when that behavior is undesirable. So it helps here to become genuinely curious about what's going on for this person. So you can sit down with them and ask, is there something else going on for you outside of work that is having you not perform to the level you're required to perform? Yeah, you might ask the question, look, is this the right place for you? Do you still feel motivated and excited to be here? I've worked with a number of leaders. I remember one lady, for example, guys, I had this conversation with her about one of her direct reports who had just, her performance had dropped. And, before we jump into performance improvement programs, before we jump into, now I'm giving warning letters, she had a sit down with this lady and came to learn that this woman and her husband had been trying to have a baby for a year and nothing was happening. And so she was slowly kind of just slipping into a bit of a depression. And that was a watershed moment for this client. It really was. And this was back in the days when we were meeting face to face. And I was in this room with this client, and it was a big moment for both of us, just that realization that, wow, sometimes it's just about asking, are you okay? I've noticed your performance has dropped. Is what else is going on? I've had this conversation with other clients who have realized that the person wasn't onboarded properly. They weren't onboarded properly. Yeah, so that created, that catalyzed a whole, rethinking of the onboarding process. Yeah, sometimes the organization changes direction and certain people no longer feel that this is where they want to be. Yeah, and they may not be, they may not be too quick with resigning, which is certainly fair enough, but it's slowly dawning on them that this might not be the right place for them to work. So with non-performers, guys, I have a bit of a different philosophy. Let's not be too quick with the warning letters and the performance improvement programs. Let's be genuinely curious and find out what's going on for this individual. Okay. So I think what we can do, Nadia, let's get a chance now to have a bit of a breakout session. We can place people in, how many are we? We're 7, are we about 7? Maybe 2 breakout rooms, and just have people have a discussion around some of the things you can do to provide challenge and growth opportunities for your star players. Some of the things you can do for these team Bs. Yeah, what kind of intentional training, guidance, mentoring can you provide for these people? And if there's a team C player in your organization, in light of this new way of thinking about it, what can you do to help this person out? Okay, so we can just jump into, Nadia, you can place everybody in their breakout rooms and just have a conversation, guys, and also say hi to one another, get to know one another. Those of you who may not have met, just catch up. We'll give you about 10 minutes, and then remember to discuss these 3 categories, and more importantly, what you can do to take care of each of these types of team members. Everyone? Great, excellent. Welcome back, guys, welcome. Would anyone like to share the insights you got from that breakout session? Go ahead, post in the chat box or unmute yourself. What came out in that session? What did you discuss?
Sisi, unfortunately, the time you gave me with Juma was not enough.
We knew this always happens.
So we
This
didn't
always
go very
happens.
far.
Yeah. Do you know what though? I have to say, I think time accelerates in these Zoom calls. I always find myself going, it's 10 minutes already. So bear with us, bear with us. One of the things Nadia and I have been talking about is to run a series of workshops. So we can certainly continue some of these conversations, but also, guys, get in touch with one another. Get in touch with one another. You're all Bloodwater grantees. You're all going through a lot of similar things. I know I was coaching 2 of your fellow grantees last year, and a lot of the things they were going through were similar. So I did put them in touch and encourage them to continue speaking to one another. So get into the habit of communicating with one another regularly, okay? And maybe in the next breakout room, we can give you a few more minutes. What came out in your breakout? What of interest did you guys discuss?
Sorry.
That's okay.
For team A, there was a feeling that in as much as this group would be they're high performers, they will really impress, that there was also need to still, just ensure that the boundaries are clearly known, so they do not overstep the boundaries, and then use the best out of them to be more like coach or a lead to the rest of the team, with clear expectations that can be looked at. And not necessarily allowing that privilege to be abused again on the other part. That
100%.
For it to be for good, not to damage the morale of others.
Yes. I really love that you've raised that point, Robert, because it's true. It's true. You certainly, and again, this is part of the succession planning. Who is a team A player that can now start helping, mentoring, running those in-house trainings. It doesn't always have to be you. They can help you. They can become your 2IC and help you with the running of the organization. One of my clients has actually, he recently put this on Facebook just 2 weeks ago. He has actually stepped away from the organization he started. He has handed the reins over to somebody else. He's moved on to start a sister company. And it takes a lot of courage and a lot of organization and a lot of nurturing to be able to do that. Yeah, step away from the baby that you founded and still have it keep going. So that it's an opportunity for that team A player to really take on some of the reins, to free you up to start a sister organization, because you're getting a lot of feedback from all the groups that you guys are helping, and I'm sure you are realizing that, wow, there's this other need over here, but we're currently not equipped to assist with that need. So, I mean, I've worked with a lot of leaders in the NGO space. As you're doing your work, you're realizing, wow, there's this other need that this community has, and we're just not set up to help them. Imagine if I could start a sister organization to help them with that need. Yeah, so it's you can do a lot with the team A's, as you say, provided the boundaries are clear and they're carefully tended to. So thanks for sharing that, Robert. Anyone else? What came out in your discussions?
Yeah, so for our group, we recognize that in the space that we're working in, there may not be very many opportunities for vertical growth or geographical growth, because for-profit organizations usually find for the high potentials a new project in another location to lead, or more senior level positions to lead, larger teams to lead and all that. But we recognize that we are limited in that sense. So the approach that we would take would be to invite these specific individuals to be innovators, to be the ones participating actively in grant making, creating new ideas, constant, challenges that the organization can tackle to keep them busy, so they don't feel stuck in their own jobs. And also just so that, you want to keep them, so you don't want them to leave the organization. So there would be people who would be leading new projects. There would be people who said mentoring and training others, and keep them very close so that they also sort of be the ones who are the thought leaders within the organization. So that way they're able to see that they're important, and also just provide for them opportunities to be heard and to be seen, because of the need for challenge.
Yes.
Yes. For the B team, yes.
Oh, sorry, you go. Go ahead, Elizabeth.
Yeah. So for the B team, a little bit more effort in guiding them and providing for them opportunities to showcase what they can do. So if there are already like projects in place, would you throw them in there so that they're involved, so that they're not just restricted to one, let's say, project? You can throw them into another similar related project, so that they can also unleash their potential in that other project that maybe is concurrently running with the project that they are in. So for instance, if it's in, like for instance, in our case, maternal and child health, you can also involve them something else in reproductive health. So something similar, but you'd want them to be able to find a space where they can showcase what they know and what they can do. So stretching them a little bit more in other areas outside of their work.
Yes.
And of course, with constant feedback to them, so that they're also aware that that support is very intentional. For the team C, this is where it's difficult, because you don't want to spend a lot of time on team C, but you have to deal with them nevertheless. So having those difficult conversations that sometimes you shy away from, sit down with them and have the courage to tell them what is going wrong, and just to understand what is going on in their lives. We were able also to practically imagine who those are in our teams and just think through how we can work with the existing team members that we have so that we can support them in a more structured way, a more intentional way.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. Great, thanks so much for sharing that, Elizabeth. One of the things I like to share with clients is in terms of giving people work that keeps them engaged and occupied, it starts at the top by asking yourself, what have I gained mastery in? What am I so good at? I've done it for the last year, 2 years, 3 years. It doesn't really add any value to me to keep doing this particular task that I can hand over to a team A. And that team A person can also think, okay, what have I done? I've gained mastery over this. It's now my second, third year of doing it that I can teach and hand over to a team B person. So keep passing on the work, guys. Keep passing on the work, because what for you is that boring thing that takes 30 minutes, for somebody else is a learning opportunity. Okay, something else to add to their, another notch to add to their belt. Okay, that's how you can, that's also how you grow a team. When the very last person says, okay, I have no one to delegate to, that could be an opportunity to hire someone completely new. Yeah, so I've worked with clients who built their teams that way, from just being one person to being 2 people to being 3 people, like that. Okay, think too around what you've gained mastery over. Now, I like what you said, Elizabeth, around, you know, being courageous enough to have those conversations with the team C guys, because the next thing I want us to talk about, remember, we're looking at how do we manage people healthily day to day. Here, giving feedback is something that many people struggle with. Okay, let me just move my chat box. So even the word feedback tends to make people get a bit tense, because unfortunately, quite often feedback is saved for negative feedback or feedback that's a bit difficult. But what we like to say to clients, in those of us who do training in organizations, is you want to also be liberal with the positive feedback. You know, hey, I really like for example, Julius, for example, at the end of this workshop, you really should tell Elizabeth she did a great job. Because you're posting in the chat, Elizabeth will share from our room. I'll leave it to Elizabeth to discuss. And she's doing a great job. So give that feedback to her at the end of this session. So the word feedback has negative connotations, unfortunately, because in organizations, we're always saving it for difficult feedback. I want to invite you guys to be liberal and free with positive feedback as well. I really liked how you did that. I really liked how you dealt with that. Hey, this was a great email. Thanks so much for doing that. That will change how feedback is received in the organization. Now, the feedback model I want to share with you guys called SBI, okay? The S stands for be specific. The S stands for specific. The B stands for behavior. And the I stands for impact, okay? So actually, maybe what I can do, just, I can even just highlight it. Oops, sorry. Civic. I was gonna just make that bold, but maybe I can do that for the presentation later when I share the presentation with you. So S specific, B behavior, I impact, okay? So what does that look like? Say, for example, CC is in your team. There was an important meeting with Bloodwater. You know, Nadia was at the meeting, and CC, your direct report, kept interrupting Nadia. Yeah. Here's how to not give that feedback. Don't sit me down and say, you know, CC, I just, you're a little rude in meetings and I'm just concerned about how this looks. If you say it like that, you're gonna get my backup. Yeah, I'm gonna get immediately defensive. Okay, because there's no context. You've made a judgment, i.e., I'm being rude. So when we give feedback that way, people are not open to receiving the information we would like to share with them. So the Sbi model looks like this. You sit CC down and you say, hey, CC, at yesterday's morning meeting with Bloodwater, so now you're being specific, and my mind can immediately go to yesterday's meeting with Bloodwater. And then you focus on the behavior. You interrupted the Bloodwater representative twice. She was talking about 1, 2, 3, and you jumped in with 4, 5, 6. And then the second time she was talking about 1, 2, 3, you jumped in with 7, 8, 9. So you see, now you're helping me to zero in on exactly what I did, instead of saying, CC, you were rude. Can everyone hear the difference there? Yeah, the first one is vague. It's a judgment. The second one, we're giving details, we're giving information. And then you share the impact on you, the impact on the person, the impact on the team. So you'll say, CC, at yesterday's morning meeting with Bloodwater, you interrupted the Bloodwater representative twice when you did da-da-da, when you did da-da-da. And I just worry that that impacts how you look to one of our key stakeholders, but also how the team looks to one of our key stakeholders. Okay, that's a very clear way of giving feedback. And it gives the other person an opportunity to reflect on what happened in yesterday's meeting at 10 a.m. with the Bloodwater representative. Okay, now the thing with SBI is you then need to allow the other person to share their side of the story. So again, here we need to be genuinely curious. You know, why was CC jumping in and interrupting? Be genuinely curious, okay? The SBI model is an invitation to have a dialogue. It's not about a monologue, okay? So one of the things that can really make people lose morale is when they're not being given feedback at all, when they're always being given the negative feedback, or when the feedback is being given in a way that feels like an attack, okay? Any questions around this? Because we would love for you to get back in your breakout rooms and just discuss, practice, give examples. Any questions though around this? Post in the chat box or unmute yourself. Okay, great. So Nadia, maybe we can jump into our breakout rooms. Just in the interest of time, we will leave it at 10 minutes again. But remember, guys, these are tools you can go ahead and practice at your own leisure after this workshop. Okay, enjoy your breakout session. We're looking at the SBI feedback model. Think about anyone, even outside of work, that you need to give feedback to. Okay, great. Welcome back, everyone. Who would like to share any insights that came out of that breakout session? Julius has had to step away because he had a 4 p.m. meeting, but that's okay. He's let us know. Go ahead and unmute yourselves. Share what came out of your breakout session.
Okay, I'm going to share.
Yeah, thank you.
We discovered that giving feedback needs a lot of methods, but we also discovered that CBI approach gives someone a chance to learn himself or herself and improve. It gives that space.
Yes. Yes, that's absolutely true, Anastasia. It's a very compassionate way of giving feedback. Yeah, so we do away with judgments. You were rude. You're such a drama queen. You don't listen. You're always late. You know, that sort of language gets people defensive even before you've started the conversation. But also, the SBI model is really great because when you're preparing to give the feedback, it also forces you to really think through this feedback that you're giving, especially if the feedback might be a bit difficult for the person to take. You've got to think, okay, when was the specific date and time? What exactly was the behavior? What exactly was the impact it had? Because sometimes we want to give someone feedback, guys, and then we realize, actually, this is not an issue. This is just a preference of mine. Yeah. So you can mess yourself up by saying, Jane, I just think you talk a bit too fast in meetings. And Peter is looking at you going, I don't think Jane talks very fast. So you see, the SBI model gives even the giver of feedback an opportunity to really think through what they want to say. Okay, great. Anything else? Anyone else want to share? Anastasia, if you want to share any more?
No, it makes me also, the way you have said it, that it gives the person who is giving the feedback also a time to learn what impact do I want to have from that person. If I do it this way, will I help the person to grow and make positive impact next time, or am I going to destroy?
Yeah, exactly.
Of course, I know the people I work with. I know so-and-so is defensive. I know so-and-so is humble, will accept it. And so how do I handle this? If I give the feedback immediately, will she not be defensive? Can I give it a day so that we can meet well? So yeah, I like the CBI, but my aim to be, am I going to make that person have a positive change on her behavior?
Yeah. Thanks for that, Anastasia. Thanks. A lot of people really find that model quite helpful. Okay, guys, so just in the interest of time, let's move on. I want us to talk about now the power of cultivating a learning culture within your organization. And here, it's again, I had already alluded to this earlier. Quite often we wait for trainings run by third parties to be intentional about imparting information, large chunks of information to our people, or we're dependent on third parties to grow and cultivate and motivate our people. But really, most training and learning happens on the job. So here, guys, I just wanted to bring your attention to this fact that most training occurs on the job. To be more intentional with the teachable moments. So someone has asked you a question, that's a teachable moment. Someone is stuck, that's a teachable moment. Somebody has done something in a way that you think needs improvement, that's a teachable moment. So your patience and your intentionality is required, yeah? And then the second way to cultivate a learning culture is to be intentional about in-house training sessions. So think about all the things you, through experience, have learned that your direct reports may not know because they haven't had the experience. And then put together just a brief training. You know, it can be 6 slides, a 1-hour training every fortnight. Yeah, a 1-hour training every 3 weeks or every month on a topic that you as the leader know is important for people to be aware of. It can be as basic as how to be professional in the workplace. It can be as complicated as applying for funding. Yeah, what are the do's and don'ts? What should your presentation have, etc., etc. It could be something technical like how to use Excel well, how to use PowerPoint well. And here with the in-house training, guys, it's not just you as the leader giving the trainings. Ask your team members, hey, what are you good at that you could teach the rest of the organization? What do you know how to do really, really well that you would like to teach the rest of the organization? Yeah. And just be intentional about running trainings consistently. I advocate for at least twice a month, maybe a Friday just for 1 hour or whenever works for you. But this is another really great way of motivating people or catalyzing that intrinsic motivation in your people. Okay, so the homework here is to go away and think about what topics an in-house training can be conducted on. Okay, great. So the third thing I want us to look at, and this is the last thing for the afternoon, is we want to leverage on each person's vision and mission, including yourself. So if I just go back to slide number 4, when we were looking at what are we going to cover today, we looked at self-awareness and the leadership styles. We've looked at how to engage and grow our team using meaning quotient, for example, managing the team well day to day by thinking about the round table, using the Sbi feedback model, being intentional about cultivating a learning culture. This third topic is just something really interesting, and it provides much food for thought for you as leaders and for your team members, developing that personal mission and vision. Okay, you want to leverage on that. How do we do that? We do it by reflecting on this question here. Imagine that it's March 8th, 2022, a year from now. The questions are, what do I see myself doing work-wise? What is the vision I have for myself? For example, what am I doing less of? What am I doing more of? What have I delegated? Yeah, what new things am I doing? And then question 2 follows on from that. Therefore, what are the steps I need to take now in order for this to become reality? So here, guys, you're thinking about your own career, your own personal and professional growth. That will then influence how you're being with your direct reports, what you're offering them, how you're growing them. And the third thing is asking your direct reports this very question as well, so that they too can think about their own career growth, their own personal growth, and then what they need to do now in order to make that a reality. So I want to give you just a couple of minutes, guys, to reflect on this question. Just jot down some of your thoughts. This is absolutely something to take away and do further reflection on. This is actually one of the very first questions I ask clients when they start the coaching program, because you need to have a compelling personal vision, yeah, to then motivate you to behave a certain way for the next 12 months. So I'll give you a couple of minutes to do that and just spend some time reflecting on this. Where do you want to be in March 2022? If you have any questions, comments, thoughts, please go ahead and mute yourself or post in the chat box. Happy to answer questions from there as well. One of the interesting things that comes up for founders, co-founders is, what happens when you want to go off and say, do further studies? Julius and Elizabeth talked earlier in the workshop about how many of their people are wanting support to do further studies, but some of you too want to go off and do further studies. Include that in your vision. What will that then mean for how you grow your people? Because you want the organization to keep going even when you've taken a sabbatical. Okay, guys, so lots of food for thought there. We are pretty much done with today's session, but before we go, I'd love to hear from you, from each of you. What's one key takeaway you've gotten from today's workshop? And what's one new action you commit to trying this week? Not next week, not next month, not in Q3. What's one new action you commit to trying this week? Go ahead, post in the chat box or unmute yourself. Let's begin with what's one key takeaway you've gotten from this afternoon's session? Who would like to share? Anastasia, Elizabeth, Carmela, Robert, and team. What's something that stood out for you quite a bit today?
I think what stood out for me was at the very beginning of those reflective moments when we're talking about the leadership styles, because I hadn't really quite thought about, Robert also says the same thing. I hadn't really given much thought about, how important the leadership style is. And so for me, it's the leadership styles and the impact that it has on the overall climate for the organization.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Elizabeth. And there's so much more we can talk about maybe in a future workshop around this. Remember the question was self-awareness. How aware are you of how you come across as a leader? This is just one lens. We can do values, for example. You bring your values to the workplace, guys. But every value has what we call a shadow side. Every value has its pros and its cons. So that's another lens through which we can look to enhance our self-awareness. Thanks so much for that, Elizabeth. Anybody else? Robert, you've said leadership styles. Thank you.
Okay, let me share. I want to come out with the 3 different kinds of persons: a performance, ones who need visual trainings, and the ones who are now reducing in their performance. I want to concentrate on the ones who are not performing now. I want to listen to them. I want to know why they are doing, where their morale is going down, and if I can bring it up so that they will reach number 1.
Yes. Yeah. Thanks so much for that, Anastasia. It's really, really important to give people the benefit of the doubt. Yeah, you'll be surprised with what you might learn when you are just willing to listen and be genuinely curious. Anytime you're having a conversation with someone, guys, I want to invite you to be genuinely curious, because if you come at people with preconceived notions and assumptions, you've already messed up the conversation. Thanks so much for that, Anastasia. Anybody else? Carmela, I don't know if you're still with us. Do you want to share?
I'm here. Hi, Sisi.
Hi, my dear. What jumped out at you? What's one key takeaway?
I think for me to know the type of staff that you have, like the ones and the A class, the B class, and the C class staff members, and trying to give opportunities for each of the tires based on their what can I say, kind of performance.
Yeah, great. Okay, great. Thanks so much, guys. I'm looking at the time. I don't want to keep you any longer. Remember, these are my details. If you want to get in touch, you can follow me on LinkedIn, not just because I like being followed. No, it's because I share a lot of free content. It's there's just so much to share that you know, for coaches like me, just only leaving it to one-on-one sessions with clients or closed meetings like this, we find that there's just a lot of people out there that just don't have the information. So follow me on those platforms, lots of video content, audio content, podcast content that will help you with your wellness and your leadership journey. Wellness is also really, really key, especially after last year, a lot of pressure in terms of our health and well-being, okay? So if you have any further questions, please go ahead and get in touch. You can email me. I'm more than happy to have a conversation with you wherever in the world you're based, yeah? Because, you know, we can chat on Zoom, WhatsApp, audio, whatever the case may be. And of course, remember, one of the earliest things I talked about, point number 3, cascade these learnings to the rest of the team that couldn't be here today. Share the video with them and have a discussion conversation around it. That's it from me. Thank you so much, guys. It's such a privilege and a pleasure to be working with you. Nadia and I have a lot of fun just, you know, creating these workshops and content for you. Thank you so much for participating. You're all doing such a great job. So it's a real privilege to be invited to come and work with you in this way. Okay, over to you, Nadia.
Thank you, Cece. I would just also want to say thank you to everyone who just created space in their schedules to be here. I will be sharing the recording with the password just by tomorrow or the next day. So again, with that cascading of learning, you can share it with other members of your team who you think could benefit from this. And then also just a little heads up and save the date. The next webinar will be April 19th, that's Monday, April 19th. It will be a technical programmatic topic on opportunities to address gender issues in WASH and HIV programs. Very fitting to make this announcement on International Women's Day. Have a great afternoon, and please feel free to contact Cece, contact me if you have any other questions or needs, and I'll be following up with each of you on the coaching in the next day or two as well. So have a great afternoon.
Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.